You human beings are some interesting motherfuckers, aren't you? You all act as if you have some sort of a moral compass, even though every single time you get together, you make an attempt to cause the death of your own flesh and blood. Do you not realize that that is what the result of being born is that you will wind up in a grave? Do you not realize that that is the result of being a parent, is that you are a murderer? You murder your own flesh and blood, and you do it for sexual pleasure and for boredom. That is the reason that you breed. You breed because you're selfish and because you're horny. You might try to make some sort of excuse like, oh, I had a child because I gave them the opportunity to live and the wonderful pleasure of being alive. And yet, you haven't even faced your death yet. So how do you know what you've given them? If you have no imagination, you might simply assume that it's not that big of a deal. But if you were to actually be honest with yourself and think about it a little bit, you would realize that you have royally fucked your own children over. And they have lost nothing by not being born if you would have not placed them here. Otherwise, the goal of humanity would be to have as many children as possible. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about that you're not sitting here having sex as quickly as possible because it would be so torturous to not be born? Would it have been? Do you remember being in any sort of pain? Do you remember having any lack? Do you remember wanting or needing anything at all before you were born? I don't. I remember absolutely nothing, which means what I remember is being at perfect peace. I remember everything was fine. I remember that I had no problems, no worries, no fears. What I know now is that no matter how much I gain, that will just be more to lose. If you own a big fancy fucking mansion, if you have a nice car and some beautiful kids, then when you're on your deathbed, you're going to be really fucking miserable, because you're going to be like, oh, I've got so much to lose, it's so sad for me to die because all this stuff I've got and all these people that I love and everything sucks so bad because now I'm dying and I'm going to lose it all. The more you have, the more you have to lose. The less you have, the more you're going to enjoy dying. And if you wouldn't have had to come here in the first place, then you wouldn't have to die. It's that fucking simple. There is no debate about this. I'm only speaking facts. It is because we were born that we will die. The leading cause of death is breeding. The only cause of death is breeding. No matter how you die, no matter when you die, no matter why you die, it is because someone fucked. Having sex is the cause of all death. Breeding is murder. It leads to rotting corpses in boxes in the ground. You will one day be nothing more than a piece of meat that is rotting and being eaten by bugs and worms. And even if you believe in souls and shit, what the fuck does that matter? Why would you want to fucking come here? Oh, because you had a good time? Yeah, good luck with that when you get your ass cracked and thrown into a box into the ground. Because it won't be worth it. You only think it'll be worth it because you haven't got that experience yet. It's really upsetting kind of get my words twisted a little bit here, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to express simply because it's so easy to express, because people are in such a disastrously state of denial about this whole thing. You want to act like this life means something, and like it amounts to something. And yeah, if people keep breeding, then okay. If people were to keep breeding, which they are doing currently, but the point is they don't have to be, then yeah, we would need to make the world a better place. We would need to build a better future. We would need to have a better tomorrow. We would need to do this and do that and fight crime and terrorism and criminals and everything else that's bad in the world. And we would need to make sure that tomorrow, for the future of our children, the world is a better place. But did you ever not think that it would maybe be much easier to just stop breeding? If you stop breeding, your kids won't be here, and then they won't have to have a better future. The fucked up state of the world won't matter to someone who's not born. If you're not born, then you're not suffering, and you're not dying. If you're not born, you're not going to starve to death. If you're not born, you don't need a job. If you're not born, you won't fight in a war and die. If you're not born, you won't get AIDS, cancer, tuberculosis, what the fuck ever. Nothing bad will ever happen to you. And you won't have any lack either. If you're not born, you're not happy because you're not sad. You need to really think about that. You're not sad because you're not happy. And you're not happy because you're not sad. You're neither one of them, which means you're perfect. That is the state of perfection. If you want to really give a definition of perfection, what you should think about is, how would you define it? How would you define perfection if you were to give it a definition? The definition of perfection, if someone with any logical sense ever gave it one, would be something that requires no change because it requires nothing, because it has no needs. The definition of perfection is something that already is as good as it can be and absolutely requires nothing to be any better. That's what you were before you were born. That's what your children were before you forced them into this world and caused them to be suffering and then dying afterwards. That's what all of us were. Every time you breed, you remove perfection from your own unborn children and send them onto death row and cause them to die. If you want world peace, stop breeding. It really is that simple. It's your own flesh and blood. Do you want your own flesh and blood to have to go through this shithole of an existence? And I don't care if you're a fucking billionaire. No matter how much you give your kids, they're going to wind up losing it all. And when they're on their deathbed, screaming and crying in pain, and they will be, because that's what happens when you die. Every once in a while, yeah, somebody dies instantly in a car accident, or instantly from some horrible disease. But that's really rare, and 99% of the time when someone tells someone that someone died instantly, it's a lie that they told them to make them feel better because they feel sorry for them. But the truth of the matter is, although that was an admirable, understandable thing to tell someone because they had compassion, they were having compassion for the living when what we should be having compassion for is the unborn. The unborn are the innocent ones. You can't get any more innocent than not being alive. You've never made a decision, had a thought or an idea, or done a single thing ever. You can't get any more innocent than that. So if you're going to care about someone, care about those who have not yet been born. If you already have kids, then cool. Do what you can for them. Teach them not to breed. Put a condom on them. Put a fucking contraception in them. However that shit works, you know. Teach them the fact that, hey, I'm sorry, I owe you my life. Don't tell your kids they owe you their life. That is some major bullshit. You had sex because you were horny. You placed them into this world on death row because you were bored and you wanted a reason to live. You did it for yourself because you're a selfish motherfucker. So tell your kids, thank God for you. I owe you my life, and I would die for you, and you don't ever have to die for me. And if you ever need anything, I'll give it to you, but you don't ever owe me a damn thing. That's what you would do if you were an honorable person. Don't be a fucking con artist and act like your kids owe you something. Your kids owe you nothing. You murdered them for sexual pleasure because you were selfish, bored, and horny. You guys need to stop breeding, and then people will stop dying. It's that simple. The human race needs to grow up, pull their pants up, and wait to die. There's no reason for this species to be here. There's no reason for any species to be here. Before we were here, we weren't suffering. And if we stop being here, we won't be suffering. It's that simple. You can enjoy your life. Go ahead and enjoy it. But don't fucking pull anybody else into it along the way. Go ahead. Go out. Drink some beers. Smoke some pot. Have a party. Drive some nice cars. Do whatever you want. But don't pull anybody else into it that didn't have to be here. We weren't suffering before we were here. And nobody will suffer because they're not here. Stop kidding yourselves. Pull your pants up. Have a party and wait to die. It's that fucking simple. It's the answer to every question, the solution to every problem, the cure for every disease. Stop breeding.